As someone who struggled to learn Italian as an adult, if I had to start again today from scratch, here's exactly how I'd do it. And trust me, there are a lot of things I would do differently. But when I first started learning Italian, I thought that doing more was the answer. More textbooks, as you can see here, more exercises, more classes, but that's not what actually worked. Now, I've made my fair share of beginner mistakes, and if I could go back, I would change the entire approach that I took to learning Italian from day one. So in this video, I want to walk you through the 3 main things that I would focus on if I was starting again today. So let's start with the first thing that I would change. Now, the hardest part about learning Italian isn't the grammar, it's getting started and not quitting. Now, the learning curve at the beginning is especially steep. You study for weeks or months or sometimes years, and you still feel like you can't say anything useful. This is a delicate stage because if you don't see those quick, tangible wins, you quit. So the very first thing I would do differently is to focus on what I call the quick start trio, so I can learn how to say more with less. So what is the quick start trio? Well, like the name suggests, it's made up of 3 things. Modal verbs, which include potere, dovere, and volere. Cognates, which are words that you might recognize from their English counterparts because they all come from Latin. And loan words. These are words that Italian has borrowed from English or other languages. And I'm going to explain each of these in more detail. But just know this is a powerful combination that gives you a series of quick wins so you can start speaking Italian from day 1, not day 201. So here's how it works. Modal verbs, so the first part of this trio, allow you to say anything in Italian without knowing hundreds of verbs or how to conjugate them all. Take a look at the formula. You take the conjugated modal verb and you add the infinitive verb. So instead of memorizing endless conjugations, you can easily form sentences like voglio, which comes from volere, I want in this case, plus the full verb mangiare. So you have the sentence
Voglio mangiare.
I want to eat. With the verb potere, which means to be able to or can. Now this is conjugated as posso, meaning I can or may I or can I, depending it's a question or not. If we add andare afterwards, then we can say phrases like
Posso andare.
I can go. And then with the word dovere, here it's conjugated in the present tense in the first person, so devo, meaning I have to. We can add a verb after this in its full form. Here we use lavorare, to work. So we can create the sentence, I have to work.
Devo lavorare.
Now this is a much smarter and more efficient way to learn Italian than how textbooks typically teach you. Now you can see how powerful this is because you just take that first part, which is conjugated, and add any old verb that you like afterwards. Now the second part of this quick start trio are cognates. Now the good news that most learners don't realize early enough is Italian isn't entirely foreign. You already know thousands, and I mean thousands of Italian words. You just haven't been shown the shortcuts yet to realize what they are. Now these are where cognates change everything. Cognates are words that look almost identical in English and Italian because they come from the same Latin roots. Words like
Informazione. Nazione. Organizzazione. Importante. Possibile.
Now you don't need to learn these, you just need to recognize them and their patterns. And once you spot a few of these patterns, it's like a light switches on. Take a look at this example. Now many English words that end in T-I-O-N almost always become Z or Z-I-O-N-E in Italian. For example, information becomes informazione. Situation becomes situazione. Education becomes educazione. And then we have verbs. Many English verbs ending in ish, I-S-H, often become ire or I-R-E in Italian. For example, to finish becomes finire. To establish becomes stabilire. We just remove that E at the beginning. Now, depending on if you speak British or American English, when we have verbs in English that end in IZE or ISE, or YZE, YSE, these usually become izzare in Italian, IZZARE. For example, to organize becomes organizzare. Again, not completely foreign after all. These are just familiar words that are in disguise. There's patterns that you can even spot with nouns. For example, nouns in English ending in ty often become ta with an accent in Italian. For example, city becomes città. Activity becomes attività. University becomes università. Now, with these clues, or shortcuts is what I like to call them, Italian suddenly stops feeling like an endless list of random words and starts feeling decodable. And if you add modal verbs on top of these, then you become really dangerous, in the good sense, meaning that you can say almost anything in Italian. You can say things like,
Possiamo organizzare?
can we organize?
Dobbiamo finire?
We have to finish.
Vuole andare all'università?
He wants to go to university. And then the third part of this quick start trio to get you speaking Italian is loanwords. Now, loanwords are words that Italian has simply borrowed from English or other languages and kept them almost exactly the same. We have words like
Computer, internet, hotel, bar, marketing.
all just with Italian pronunciation, and the spelling usually stays the same. You don't need to memorize these because you already know them. They work in Italian exactly how you would expect them to. Again, if we combine these loanwords with modal verbs and those cognates, suddenly we can say things like,
Posso usare il computer?
can I use the computer?
Devo controllare l'email.
I have to check the email.
Voglio prenotare un hotel.
I want to book a hotel. Now you can start to see why I call this the quick start trio, because combining these three elements is a winning combo to get you speaking from day one. And this matters because confidence doesn't come from knowing more rules, it comes from being able to say something and being understood. Now, I learned this the hard way. Now, when I started learning Italian, my bookshelves were packed with Italian textbooks and grammar books, and yet I remember thinking, why can't I just read a few pages and walk away with something tangible that I can actually use today? Now, my goal wasn't to recite the alphabet or name the colors of the rainbow or kitchen utensils. My goal was to talk to my Italian dad because I have Italian heritage, and also my relatives when I went to Italy. Now, textbooks aren't all bad. Of course, they have their place, but I would never follow one cover to cover again. I would use them like a dictionary. I would look up what I need, skip what I don't, and learn based on my goals, not what some table of contents says I should do. Now, this one change alone would have saved me years of frustration. Now, to learn more about how to use modal verbs and cheat your way to fluency, make sure you download my free PDF cheat sheet, which I've linked in the description below this video. Now, for years, every time I forgot an Italian word or a grammar rule, I thought something was wrong with me. I'd think, why can't I remember this? Why does everyone else seem to get it? And am I too old to learn? Like, have I missed my chance? But years later, I learned something that completely changed how I saw language learning, and it wasn't me after all. It's understanding how memory works. Now, there's something called the forgetting curve, and research shows that within the first hour of learning something new, we forget around 50%. Let me repeat that. Within the first hour of learning something new, we forget almost half of it. This is crazy news. And after a week, we forget roughly 77%. And that drop off is normal, unfortunately. Now, this is built into your brain. And when I discovered this, I changed how I learned Italian to combat it. I started to work with my brain, not against it. And that's when I started using mnemonics. Now, mnemonics are simple memory shortcuts that link new information to something you already know. They turn learning something new, which can be stressful, into something playful. And when I think of this, it reminds me of Mary Poppins when she used to say, in every job that must be done, there is an element of fun. you find the fun, and snap, the job's a game. So I like to apply this mentality to help me to remember Italian words by adopting these mnemonics. And one of the first times that I applied mnemonics was to help me to remember Italian subject pronouns, lui and lei, because he in Italian is lui and she is lei. But to me, they look similar, they sounded similar, and I always mixed them up until I created a mental image of them, a mnemonic. For me, Louis sounded like the French name Louis, and Lei sounded like the girl's name Leia. And then to make sure I didn't mix up the gender, I imagined King Louis for Louis and Princess Leia for Lei. And that was it. I never mixed them up again. Now this isn't some weird trick. We also use mnemonics all the time in English. Think about how we remember the colors of the rainbow with the acronym Roy G. Biv, or reciting that mnemonic I before E except after C when spelling words like receive. And then we have my very educated mother just served us nachos to remember the order of the planets. Now you can make up any mnemonic you like, and I highly encourage it. Now we use these in English without really noticing, so why not use the same strategy in Italian? Now the second thing I would do differently if I was learning Italian from scratch is to stop blaming myself for forgetting things. If something doesn't stick, I wouldn't force it anymore. I'd ask, what image or sound or association can help me and my brain remember this and internalize it? Now this is important because when learning feels lighter and more enjoyable, you're far more likely to stick with it, especially because that learning curve is so steep. And if you stick with it, that will eventually lead you to fluency or to reach whatever your goals are. It's not about perfection and it's not about talent. It's about consistency and enjoying that feeling of progress, and mnemonics will make that possible for you. Now, the third thing I would do if I was learning Italian from scratch all over again is something that I'd probably prioritize above everything else. Not probably, actually, I would definitely prioritize this above anything else because it is key. And it is speak every day. Not perfectly, not fluently, just regularly with all the mistakes. Now this is important because a lot of people think, including myself, I thought, well, if I live in Italy, I'll be fluent by osmosis. But here's the truth that I learned the hard way. It's not where you live, it's how you live. Even when I was living in Italy, surrounded by Italian every single day, I still needed to be intentional about speaking. I still needed structure. I still needed practice. I still needed safe, low-pressure opportunities to speak. For a long time, I avoided speaking Italian, even in Italy and with friends. I was scared of making mistakes and looking like a fool. I was worried about my accent too and for choosing the wrong tense or saying something stupid or offensive, whatever it was. But what I realized later is that none of that was about my skill in Italian. It was about confidence. Everything changed when I stopped waiting to feel ready and started speaking daily, imperfectly, not perfectly. I just put myself out there. I had to force myself to do that. So when I realized this, one of the best decisions I ever made was to find a language exchange partner, an Italian that wanted to improve their English in exchange for me practicing my Italian with them. And we would do 30 minutes in each language. And instead of sitting across from each other at a table, which can be a bit intimidating, we used to walk around the neighborhood together, and that made all the difference. Walking gave us things to talk about. The surroundings sparked conversation naturally. The pressure dropped, and moving our bodies actually helped the language flow more. Learning while walking is incredibly powerful, especially if you're a kinesthetic learner type, because your body is relaxed, your mind is less tense, and suddenly speaking feels more natural. Now at this point you might be thinking, well, that's great for you. You were living in Italy and you had a language exchange partner. But actually, when I first started learning Italian, I was still living in Australia. And I also made small intentional choices to bring Italian into my daily life. I only ate at Italian restaurants. I chatted to the waiters. I practiced ordering food and asking questions and making jokes. And I knew I was making those mistakes, but I tried not to get too hung up on them. Because mistakes aren't something to avoid, they are something that you must pass through, because that's how you learn. It's not a dead end. As Italians say, sbagliando si impara. And there's also another interesting element to speaking, because when you meet new people, you realize you say the same things over and over again. For example, you introduce yourself, you explain where you're from, what you do, and you share the same personal details with everyone. And you notice that when you say these things, your brain doesn't really panic. You're kind of in a robotic reaction mode because you've said these things so many times. It switches to a kind of autopilot. The words come out without you even thinking because you've said them countless times before. And this is what I call fake fluency. You kind of feel fluent for a brief moment, just like a native speaker. And this fake fluency is powerful because it builds confidence and it frees up mental space to think about new things to say. And it also keeps the conversation moving, even when your Italian isn't perfect, and it doesn't need to be. And this is why you don't need to live in Italy to make real progress. You just need to live with Italian wherever you are. Fluency doesn't come from your location, it comes from daily use. So if I had to learn Italian from scratch, I wouldn't do everything. I'd focus on just these 3 things. I'd start with the quick start trio, including modal verbs, cognates, and loanwords, so I could say more with less and get those quick wins from day 1. I'd use mnemonics to work with my memory, not against it, so learning feels lighter, more enjoyable, and I don't feel so stuck all the time. And thirdly, I'd speak every single day, low pressure, in real life and imperfect, because fluency doesn't come from knowing more, it comes from using what you already know. And that's it, not everything, not all at once, just that top 20% of the language that actually moves the needle and keeps you from quitting in that fragile early stage. Now, if you want help structuring your learning this way from day 1, I've put together a free ebook called How to Learn Italian So Fast It Feels Like Cheating. It's packed with the exact strategies, shortcuts, and mindset shifts I wish I'd known sooner. Just click on the link below this video to get your free copy. If I had to start over, that's exactly where I'd begin. So while you may know the formula for speaking from day 1, if you don't know enough words in Italian, you won't be able to say very much. So make sure you watch this video here where I teach you how to learn 15,000 Italian words in just a few minutes.